We all have our different viewpoints when it comes to how we feel about life. What's fair, what's not fair, our own interpretations in terms of what a perfect world or society should be or look like. It goes without saying that we all have the right to feel however we want to feel. But here's the thing, if you have a tremendous amount of influence, I think with that influence comes a great responsibility. A tremendous responsibility. And I just feel that some of these people that do have a fair amount of influence are just taking that responsibility and chucking it out the window, completely disregarding it. I'm hoping that Mr. Manvier doesn't mind that I use him as an example. Before I do, I just want to make something abundantly clear. I have absolutely nothing against developers trying to make a statement, utilizing whatever tool they have at their disposal in order to try to make a change or do some good. But it has to be done somewhat organically. If your political ideology is going to be the driving force, well, let's just think about this for a second. Let's just use BioWare as an example. It's a fairly large team, made up of quite a few people that might actually have opposing viewpoints. So right off the bat, you can see how that might cause a little bit of a conflict internally if everyone's not on the same page when it does come to one's ideology. And so back to Mr. Manvier. Let's just assume for a moment that maybe he has more creative say-so, he has more power than the rest of the development team. And he's also extremely determined when it comes to the game development being impacted by his ideology every step of the way. So if you're working under him, you're either going to have to align your ideology with his, and really quickly, or it's just not going to work out. So when it comes to this particular development team, I personally believe that you must be on the same page politically, or you need not apply. It appears to me that he can't get enough when it comes to using Twitter as a platform, as a tool to spread his message, for lack of better words. What on earth makes you think that he would not use his power within game design to use a video game to be a harbinger for the same purposes? The reason why I'm making this video is because I kind of find it not only hypocritical but amusing that some media outlets condemning Gamergate, wishing it to just die off, pretty much giving it a jump start right now, some CPR, a second life, in order to use it for their narrative. Much of the criticism surrounding Mass Effect Andromeda has nothing to do with anything other than the bad facial animations. And sure, when it comes to how people were actually expressing their thoughts, it could have been handled differently. But that has nothing to do with Gamergate. That has nothing to do with anything else than that people sometimes suck when it comes to how they express themselves. Okay, that's just an individualistic kind of thing. And then some people are just flat out assholes, okay? And the majority of people that are looking at this without any bias, without any kind of agenda, understands that the lead animator, this young woman, it's no fault of hers. I mean, I myself and plenty of other people would have taken this opportunity and ran with it as well. Figuratively speaking, of course. Many would consider it to be an opportunity of a lifetime. Now, if you're just looking at things from the surface and trying to base your judgment on headlines without doing any research, you might assume that people are trying to use her as some sort of a scapegoat. It might actually appear that way because her picture keeps popping up and is floating around quite often when it comes to Twitter, and that's only because she's tied into the story. Ultimately, people that have any shred of common sense understand all the blame is to be put on BioWare, their management, their oversight, their quality control. The worst thing you could say about her is that she was offered a job and took it. I mean, what was she supposed to say? Oh, no, please, don't give me the job. I don't think I'm experienced enough. I mean, of course she's going to take it. Anyone in their right mind would take it. So, these outlets are trying to turn this into something it isn't. Feminists are trying to turn this into something it isn't. White knight cucks and social justice warriors are trying to turn this into something it isn't. if this would have, for example, been a dude that was in charge of the animation and the same situation popped off, let me tell you something. Everything would go down the same exact way with a lot less, hey, she got the job using the oldest profession jokes and things like that, okay? But believe me, they would be replaced by other jokes, low blows, or if you just want to call them blatant insults. That will all come down to how you interpret the situation, how conditioned you are to the internet, as well as your tolerance level and understanding as far as, okay, there's always going to be people out there talking some shit, just as there will always be activists and people hiding in bushes waiting for something like this to unfold just so they can pounce, piggybacking, and ultimately using this momentum to pitch their own political ideology and agendas, just the way it is. And the ones creating this Gamergate narrative are using the worst of the worst examples when it comes to what's being said on Twitter. They're absolutely ignoring the majority. Okay, if you go and look at all these tweets and you go and look at all these comments, you will see that when it comes to people just throwing insults around and things like that, they actually fall within the minority. The majority of people are focused on the issue at hand and addressing it accordingly. Some people, of course, a lot more articulately and professionally than others. And again, that all comes down to the individual, their maturity level or lack of. And I can't emphasize this enough. A couple of these outlets are just trying to put the spin cycle on here, so they can introduce their own dialogue, so they can introduce their own conversation, rather than paying attention and being a part of the real conversation that's going on presently. They're turning it into something it isn't. And it feels like it's always the same outlets, it's always the same developers caught up in this fucking nonsense. And that makes me actually wonder, like, is this even about video games anymore? Do these developers just see video games as a tool, as a vessel to try and shape and mold how people think? And it just feels like the actual game, in this case, a AAA experience, a certain standard, the quality, the gameplay, all the good stuff, is taking a backseat to their political ideology and making sure that they make a statement, making sure that they're heard. And at a time where the game is about to launch, you would expect these people to be very excited and passionate about convincing us to buy the game and talking about certain things that have to do with the game. But instead they're engaged with this nonsense. And it always appears to be the same developers, the same media outlets caught up in this bullshit. But here's the thing, people are getting tired of this. People, more often than not, use gaming as an escape from the harsh realities of life. Meanwhile, the game itself is just becoming a huge reminder of how bad life can suck. Because again, these developers are forcing it. It has to be a more organic thing. And the sad part is, you have people like me that absolutely adore the Mass Effect universe. My health was really bad at one point. And I remember thinking, I hope I can hold on long enough. I hope I can at least make it to the next Mass Effect. And then this happens. Creating deliberate, false narratives just in order to escape any kind of accountability or shift the focus away from the negative critique that the game is actually receiving. And then the ultimate kick to the balls is, your fans deserve better. This has nothing to do with racism. This has nothing to do with sexuality, racism, sexism, inequality. But plenty of people want it to be about this. Plenty of people are trying to turn it into be just that. This is all about people seeing red flags when it comes to poor animations, okay? This would have happened with any game at the AAA level, because we're talking about hoping that the best of the best in the industry are handcrafting these experiences for us that we are actually going to pay a premium for. So of course, the natural response, the natural thing to do when you see signs of the development possibly going in a different direction, the normal thing is to actually talk about it. And because we did, we're now misogynist, we're now racist, we're now sexist, we're now driven by Gamergate. I sincerely hope and plead with you to not fall for that. Don't listen to me. Go out there and do your own research. Please, do me, yourself, and everyone else that favor.